Have you ever wondered how a simple piece of wood could make an iron axe head float in a river? Sounds impossible, right? But what if I told you that this is just one of the incredible stories about the prophet Elisha? Today, we're diving into a journey filled with unexpected miracles, acts of faith that defy logic, and moments where the impossible. Picture this. The field is calm, the sun is shining high in the sky, and a young farmer named Elisha is plowing the land with his oxen. It's a day like any other, but little does Elisha know that his life. Suddenly, he sees a majestic figure approaching in the distance, draped in a cloak that gleams in the sunlight. This man is Elijah, the great prophet of God, known for his powerful deeds and deep connection with the Lord. Without saying a word, Elijah walks up to Elisha and throws his cloak over him, a symbolic gesture that would mark the beginning of Elisha, surprised and moved by this act, feels a calling stronger than anything he has ever experienced in his life. He doesn't hesitate. He leaves his oxen, his plow, and runs after Elijah. When he catches up, Elisha asks for permission to say goodbye to his family before moving forward. Elijah, with a serene look, gives his consent, knowing that this was a final farewell to the life Elisha once knew. Elisha returns home, gathers his family, and does something remarkable. He sacrifices the oxen he used for work and uses the wood from the plow to light a fire. It's a symbolic act, a sign that there's no turning back. From that moment on, Elisha is fully committed to God's calling, ready to follow Elijah and learn the ways of the Lord. This moment marks the beginning of one of the most extraordinary journeys of faith and miracles ever recorded in the Bible. Elisha didn't just accept the calling. He gave himself wholeheartedly, willing to leave everything behind and embrace the destiny God had prepared for him. And so, with Elijah's cloak on his shoulders and the fire of faith burning in his heart, Elisha begins the path that would lead him to become one of Israel's greatest prophets. A story that teaches us about the power of answering God's call, leaving the familiar behind, and fully trusting in his plan. With Elijah's cloak on his shoulders, Elisha faithfully follows his master, learning and observing every move, every word, like a dedicated disciple. But the day that would change everything came quickly. Elijah knew his time on earth was coming to an end, and Elisha, with a mix of sadness and anticipation, followed each step with even greater intensity. They reached the Jordan River, a place that had already witnessed so many miracles and significant moments in Israel's history. There, at the riverbank, Elijah did something extraordinary. He took the cloak, the same one he had placed over Elisha, and rolled it up. With a firm motion, he struck the waters of the Jordan, and like a portal opening, the waters parted, creating a dry path for the two men to cross. On the other side of the river, the atmosphere felt different, charged with a divine presence. Elisha, sensing the gravity of the moment, couldn't contain his anxiety. He knew the end was near, and that Elijah would soon be taken. Before it happened, Elisha made a bold request. "Please, let me inherit a double portion of your spirit." Elijah, with a deep gaze, told Elisha that he had asked for a difficult thing, but that if he saw him being taken away, his request would be granted. And then, in a moment that seemed to last forever, chariots of fire appeared, separating the two, and Elijah was taken up to heaven in a whirlwind. Elisha, now alone but with his eyes fixed on the sky, watched as his master disappeared. In his hands was the cloak that Elijah had let fall. With tears in his eyes and his heart pounding, Elisha picked up the cloak and returned to the Jordan. He knew the moment of truth had come. If he had indeed received the double portion of Elijah's spirit, the power of God would now be with him. Elisha rolled up the cloak, just as Elijah had done before, and struck the waters, asking, "Where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" And the waters, obedient to the authority that now rested on Elisha, parted once again. The proof was there, right before his eyes. The calling had been confirmed, and the power of God now flowed through Elisha. He had become Elijah's successor, ready to perform great works and continue the mission God had started with his master. The crossing of the Jordan was not just a demonstration of power, but a confirmation that Elisha was destined to be an even greater prophet. someone who would carry Elijah's spirit and multiply it in his journey. From that moment on, Elisha walked alone, but never without guidance, for the God of Elijah was with him, leading every step. With God's power now upon him, Elisha began to be known throughout the land of Israel. His works and miracles spread like wildfire, touching the lives of many. It was during this phase of his journey that Elisha encountered a poor widow, a desperate woman with eyes full of fear and sorrow. Her husband, who had faithfully served the prophets, had died, leaving her with an impossible debt and 2 sons who were about to be taken as slaves by the creditors. Not knowing what else to do, the woman went to Elisha for help. "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that he feared the Lord," she pleaded. "Now the creditor is coming to take my 2 sons as slaves." Elisha, moved by the compassion that came from his faith in God, looked at her and asked a question that, at first glance, seemed simple but carried deep weight. "What do you have in your house?" The widow, her voice broken by despair, replied, "Your servant has nothing in the house but a jar of oil." Elisha then gave an instruction that seemed as unlikely as it was powerful. "Go, borrow vessels from all your neighbors, empty vessels, not just a few. Then go inside, shut the door behind you and your sons, and pour oil into all those vessels. And as each one is filled, set it aside." The woman, driven by faith and without questioning, did exactly as Elisha had instructed. She and her sons went from house to house, borrowing every vessel they could find. When they were all gathered, they shut themselves inside their home, with the small jar of oil in hand. She began to pour the oil, and something miraculous happened. The jar never ran dry. Vessel after vessel, the oil kept flowing, filling each container to the brim. When the last vessel was filled, the oil finally ceased. With the vessels now full, the woman returned to Elisha, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debt. You and your sons can live on the rest." The transformation of that small and seemingly insignificant jar of oil into an abundance that changed the widow's life is a testament to God's power, who cares for the needy and performs miracles through those who trust in him. By guiding the woman in faith, Elisha not only saved her family but also showed everyone that in God's hands, the little we have can become more than enough. As Elisha's fame spread throughout the region, his presence became known not only among the poor and afflicted but also among the rich and influential. It was during one of these occasions that he passed through the town of Shunem, where a notable woman, known for her generosity and faith, invited him to stay at her house. This woman, who had no children and whose husband was already old, saw Elisha as a man of God and wanted to bless him, not imagining that an even greater blessing was in store for her. She convinced her husband to build a small room for Elisha in their house, furnished with a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp, so he could rest whenever he passed by. Touched by the Shunammite woman's hospitality, Elisha wanted to repay her kindness somehow. He called his servant Gehazi and asked what could be done for her. Gehazi, knowing the woman's situation, said, "She has no son, and her husband is old." Elisha then called the woman and made a promise that seemed impossible. "Next year at this time, you will hold a son in your arms." The Shunammite woman, surprised and almost incredulous, asked not to be deceived with false hopes. But Elisha spoke with the authority of the God he served. And so, as prophesied at the appointed time, she gave birth to a son, bringing immense joy to her home. The years passed and the boy grew strong and healthy. But one day, while he was with his father in the fields, the boy began to feel an intense pain in his head. He was taken back home, where his mother held him in her arms, but tragically, he died at noon. The Shunammite woman's heart was broken, but in the midst of her pain, she did not lose her faith. She laid the boy's body on Elisha's bed and, without saying anything to anyone, saddled a donkey and immediately set out to find the prophet. When Elisha saw her from afar, he knew something was wrong and sent Gehazi to ask if everything was all right. But the Shunammite woman, with unwavering determination, only wanted to speak to Elisha. When she reached him, she fell at the prophet's feet and said, "Did I ask for a son, my lord? Didn't I tell you, don't raise my hopes?" Elisha, realizing the gravity of the situation, sent Gehazi ahead with his staff to place it on the boy's face. But this did not bring the boy back to life. So Elisha went personally to the Shunammite's house. He went up to the room where the boy was, closed the door, and prayed to the Lord. Then Elisha lay on the boy, mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hands to hands. The boy's body began to warm. Elisha got up and walked back and forth in the room, then repeated the gesture. And suddenly, the boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. Elisha called the Shunammite woman and said, "Take your son." And she, with tears of gratitude and awe, took her son in her arms, a living witness to God's power and mercy, revealed through the prophet Elisha. This miracle was not just a testament to the Shunammite woman's unwavering faith, but also a powerful reminder that even in the most desperate situations, God has the power to bring life where there is death, to restore what seemed lost, and to fulfill his promises beyond our understanding. Elisha's fame continued to spread, and with it, the opportunities to demonstrate God's power among his people. During one of his journeys, Elisha arrived in a city where the water was bitter and unfit for drinking, causing sickness and infertility in the land. The desperate inhabitants sought out Elisha, knowing he could bring a divine solution to the problem that had plagued them for so long. With his unwavering confidence in the Lord, Elisha asked for a new bowl filled with salt. The simplicity of the request surprised the men of the city, but without question, they obeyed. Elisha took the bowl of salt and went to the source of the water. When he reached the spring, he threw the salt into the water and declared, "This is what the Lord says. I have purified this water. No more death or unfruitfulness will come from it." From that moment on, the waters were healed, and the city was saved from its affliction. What had once been a source of bitterness and death became a source of life and prosperity for everyone living there. The people, who had once feared drinking the water, now used it freely, grateful for the miracle God had performed through Elisha. This powerful act was not just a demonstration of a physical miracle, but also a profound spiritual lesson. Through the purification of the water, God showed that he could transform any bitter situation into a blessing, that what is impure can be purified by his word and his power. And so, Elisha continued his journey, leaving a trail of hope and transformation wherever he went. Each miracle, each intervention, was another opportunity to show that the God of Israel was alive, attentive to the needs of his people, and capable of bringing life where there had only been despair. Time passed, and the stories of Elisha's miracles continued to spread throughout the land of Israel. His name had become synonymous with hope, especially in times of need. It was during one of these periods of scarcity that a new challenge arose. 100 men were gathered in a remote location, following Elisha's instructions, when the hunger became unbearable. The little food they had was not enough for everyone, and despair began to grow among them. Elisha, however, remained calm and full of faith, knowing that God had already provided a solution. A man appeared, bringing with him 20 barley loaves and some newly harvested grain, a modest offering considering the number of people present. To most, it seemed insufficient, an offering that would hardly satisfy the hunger of a few, let alone 100 starving men. But Elisha, always confident in God's provision, commanded, "Give it to the people to eat." The servant, perplexed, responded, "How can I set this before 100 men?" Elisha, however, repeated the order, this time with even more conviction. "Give it to the people to eat, for this is what the Lord says. They will eat and have some left over." The servant, though still uncertain, obeyed. He began to distribute the bread and grain among the men, and a miracle happened before their eyes. Everyone ate to their fill, and, just as Elisha had said, there was food left over. The multiplication of the bread that day was not just an act of physical sustenance, but a powerful demonstration that in God's hands, even the little can become much. It was a lesson of trust and faith, showing that even in the most difficult circumstances, God's provision never fails. Throughout his life, Elisha not only performed miracles but also taught the people that the God of Israel is a God of abundance, capable of meeting all the needs of those who trust in him. And so, once again, faith was strengthened and hope renewed. As Elisha continued his mission, guided by the power and grace of the Lord. With God's power always present in his actions, Elisha continued to perform miracles that left everyone around him in awe. One of the most notable episodes in his journey occurred when a great commander of the Syrian army, named Naaman, was struck with a terrible disease, leprosy. Even though he was a powerful man, Naaman was desperate, as his condition isolated him from everything he loved and from his own people. It was then that a young Israelite servant, who worked in Naaman's household, spoke of the prophet Elisha. She told Naaman's wife that the prophet in Israel could heal him. This news sparked a glimmer of hope in Naaman's heart, and he immediately sought permission from the king of Syria to seek a cure in Israel. With a letter from the king in hand and accompanied by a great entourage, Naaman arrived at Elisha's house. He expected the prophet to come out to meet him, perhaps to perform some grand ritual. However, Elisha did not come out to greet him. Instead, he sent a messenger with a simple instruction. Go, wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed. The simplicity of the instruction angered Naaman. He felt disrespected, thinking that the rivers in his own land were much better than the Jordan. With wounded pride, he was about to return home without obeying the prophet's command. But his servants, more sensible, urged him to reconsider. My father, if the prophet had told you to do something difficult, wouldn't you have done it? How much more, then, when he says, wash and be cleansed? Reluctantly, Naaman agreed. He went down to the Jordan River and, one by one, dipped himself 7 times in the waters. And when he emerged the 7th time, something extraordinary happened. His skin was as clean and healthy as that of a child. The leprosy had completely disappeared. Overcome with gratitude and reverence, Naaman returned to Elisha's house, now recognizing the God of Israel as the one true God. He offered gifts to the prophet as a sign of his gratitude, but Elisha refused, making it clear that the healing had not come from his hands, but from God. Naaman then asked to take with him some soil from Israel so that he could build an altar to the Lord in his own land. He vowed never again to offer sacrifices to other gods, only to the Lord. Naaman's story is a powerful reminder that pride can keep us from God's healing and blessings, but humility and obedience can open the door to unexpected miracles. Through this simple act of faith, Elisha not only healed Naaman's body but also touched his soul, leading him to a transformative encounter with the God of Israel. Elisha's fame continued to grow, and with it, the extraordinary situations he encountered. One day, he was with a group of prophets by the Jordan River, where they were planning to build a new dwelling place for the community. Each man had brought his axe to cut wood and prepare the site. As they worked hard, one of the prophets, who had borrowed his axe, suddenly saw the iron axe head come loose from the handle and fall into the deep waters of the Jordan. Panic seized the young prophet, as the axe was a valuable tool, and he knew he could not afford to replace it. He ran to Elisha, distressed, and said, "Oh no, my lord, it was borrowed." Elisha, always calm, did not panic. He asked the young man where the axe head had fallen, and the prophet pointed to the exact spot in the river. Elisha then did something no one expected. He cut a piece of wood and threw it into the water at the indicated spot. Then something miraculous happened. The iron, which should have sunk and remained at the bottom of the river, floated to the surface as if it were as light as the wood. The young prophet, both incredulous and relieved, reached out and retrieved the axe head. This simple yet powerful miracle was not just a demonstration of the authority Elisha had over the forces of nature, but also proof that God cares about every detail of our lives, even the things that seem small and insignificant. Through Elisha, God was showing that his provision and care are complete, from the great miracles to the daily needs. For the young prophet, that axe was a vital tool, and God, through Elisha, intervened to ensure he would not suffer loss. This miracle, though seemingly simple, revealed God's continuous presence among his people, willing to act even in the most ordinary circumstances. Elisha's life continued to be a series of miracles and signs of God's power, and his fame spread not only among the people of Israel but also to neighboring nations. During this time, the king of Syria, who was at war with Israel, began to notice something strange. all his attack plans were being thwarted. Every time he set an ambush, the army of Israel seemed to be one step ahead, as if they knew exactly what he was going to do. Confused and furious, the king of Syria suspected that there was a traitor in his ranks, someone who was revealing his secrets to the king of Israel. He gathered his servants and demanded to know who the spy among them was. One of his officers, however, replied, "No, my lord the king. But Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the very words you speak in your bedroom." Determined to eliminate this threat, the king of Syria ordered his army to find Elisha and capture him. They discovered that Elisha was in Dothan, and the king sent a large force of horses and chariots to surround the city during the night. At dawn, Elisha's servant went out and saw the Syrian army surrounding the city. Terrified, he ran back and said to Elisha, "Oh no, my lord, what shall we do?" Elisha, however, remained calm. He said to his servant, "Don't be afraid. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them." And then Elisha prayed, "Lord, open his eyes so that he may see." God answered Elisha's prayer, and suddenly, the servant saw something extraordinary. The hills were full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. The heavenly army was there, invisible until then, ready to protect the prophet of God. With this vision, the servant's courage was renewed. Elisha then prayed again, this time asking the Lord to blind the Syrian soldiers. And so it happened. The men were struck with blindness and confusion. Elisha then went out to meet them, and without them realizing it, he led them to Samaria, right into the middle of the city of the king of Israel. When the king of Israel saw the enemy soldiers, he asked Elisha if he should kill them. But Elisha, always moved by God's mercy, replied, "Do not kill them. Would you kill those you have captured with your own sword and bow? Set food and water before them so that they may eat and drink and then go back to their master." The king of Israel followed Elisha's advice. He prepared a great feast for the Syrian soldiers, who, after eating and drinking, were sent back to their master. And from that day, the Syrian raids against Israel stopped. This story not only demonstrated God's power in protecting his servants, but also revealed the importance of mercy and compassion, even in times of war. Guided by divine wisdom, Elisha turned an act of conflict into an act of peace, showing that God's ways often challenge our expectations and reveal his greatness in surprising ways. Time passed, and Elisha continued to fulfill his mission as God's prophet, performing miracles and advising kings, always guided by divine wisdom and power. But, like all men, the time came when Elisha fell gravely ill, a sickness that would lead to his death. Even so, his influence and the power of God in his life were far from over. As Elisha lay on his deathbed, the king of Israel, Joash, came to visit him. The king was distressed, knowing that the prophet, who had so often interceded for Israel, was about to pass away. When Joash saw Elisha, he wept and exclaimed, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel." It was a recognition of the vital role Elisha had played in protecting and guiding Israel, comparing him to the military strength of the kingdom. Even in his final moments, Elisha still had a powerful lesson to teach. He asked King Joash to bring a bow and arrows. When Joash complied, Elisha, with his frail hands, placed his hands on the king's hands and instructed him to open the window facing east, toward Syria, Israel's enemy. Elisha then commanded Joash to shoot an arrow, and as he did, Elisha proclaimed, "The Lord's arrow of victory, the arrow of victory over Aram. You will completely destroy the Arameans at Aphek." Elisha didn't stop there. He told the king to take the remaining arrows and strike the ground with them. Joash struck the ground 3 times and stopped. This angered Elisha, who rebuked the king for his lack of persistence. "You should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times. Then you would have defeated Aram completely. But now you will defeat it only 3 times." This final lesson from Elisha was a warning about the importance of perseverance and complete trust in God, especially in times of crisis. Even on the brink of death, Elisha was concerned about Israel's future and wanted to ensure that the king understood that victory would only be complete if he fully trusted in the Lord. Shortly after, Elisha died and was buried. But even in death, the power of God that had worked through Elisha was not finished. Sometime later, a group of men was burying a friend when they saw a band of Moabite raiders. In their haste and fear, they threw the body of their friend into Elisha's tomb and fled. As soon as the body touched Elisha's bones, the dead man came to life and stood up. This final miracle was a testament to the enduring power of God, manifested through Elisha, even after his death. It was as if the prophet's legacy continued to echo, proving that the impact of a life dedicated to God does not end with death, but continues to influence and transform lives. Elisha was a prophet whose ministry was marked by miracles and acts of faith that defied human expectations. His life teaches us that God's power knows no limits and that true faith can move mountains, raise the dead, and transform kingdoms. Even after his death, Elisha's legacy remained, inspiring future generations to trust in the God he served with such devotion and courage.